You know that feeling? You're traveling, maybe in Europe, you grab something you eat all the time back home and it just tastes different. Or maybe it feels different. It's not just your imagination, and it's definitely not just about the recipe. There's this huge fundamental divide in how our food is made, so let's get into it. Okay, for so many people, the perfect example is bread, right? I hear this all the time. Friends go to Europe, eat croissants and baguettes all day, and they feel great. But then they come back to the States, have a sandwich, and suddenly feel bloated and tired. It's such a common story. So what's the deal? Is it just in our heads, or is there something really, truly different going on inside that loaf? Right, let's call this the bread paradox. And to crack this case, we've got to become food detectives. Our first clue? It's always in the same place, the ingredients list. This is where the real story starts to unfold. So the difference starts with the most basic building block of bread, the flour itself. In the EU, it's pretty simple. They're not allowed to bleach flour with chemicals. It just ages naturally, keeping its nutrients intact. But in the US, it's a whole different process. Flour is often bleached with chemicals, like benzoyl peroxide, to get that super bright white color. This process actually strips out the good stuff, the nutrients, which then have to be artificially added back in. They call it enriched. So right from the get-go, we're talking about two completely different ingredients. But really, it's the additives where things get wild. Let's start with a big one, a chemical with a pretty infamous nickname, azodicarbonamide, or ADA. You might have heard of it as the yoga mat chemical. And yeah, that's because it's the same stuff used to make plastics and, you guessed it, yoga mats, more foamy and flexible. So why is it in bread? Well, it works as a dough conditioner, making commercial dough stronger and easier to work with. And this is where that great divide just smacks you in the face. The European Union, they banned ADA as a food additive all the way back in 2005. Why? Because of concerns that when it breaks down, it creates a compound that was shown to be carcinogenic in lab animals. Meanwhile, in the US, it's still permitted. The FDA labels it as Generally Recognized as Safe, or GRAS. Now, it's worth noting that the FDA did announce in May 2025 that it's finally going back to review its approval, but for now, it's still on the table. All right, so let's keep unpacking this ingredients list, because, and this is the important part, ADA isn't just some weird one-off example. Oh no, there are other additives you'll find all over the place in American bread that are a total no-go in Europe. Okay, let's talk about another one. Potassium bromate. Just like ADA, this stuff is a dough strengthener. For big commercial bakeries, it's kind of a miracle worker. It helps the bread puff up higher, gives it that fluffy, perfectly white texture, and best of all for them, it's cheap and super effective. But as you can probably guess, it comes with a pretty controversial backstory. Just take a look at this timeline. The concerns here are not new. We're talking way back in 1982. A Japanese study found it caused tumors in lab rats. That's a long time ago. 8 years later, in 1990, the EU and the UK banned it. Then, in 1999, a World Health Organization agency officially classified it as possibly carcinogenic to humans. And yet, here we are, and it's still used in the US today. California is finally banning it, but that doesn't even take effect until 2027. So this just begs the question, right? Why is the US so far behind on this? Well, get this. The FDA's last formal literature review for potassium bromate was planned in 1973. 1973. That's more than half a century ago. And more importantly, that's almost a decade before that major study linking it to cancer even came out. Okay, but this whole divide isn't just about what happens in the factory or the bakery. It actually starts way earlier. It goes all the way back to the fields. So let's look at a really common chemical used in farming. 2.4 billion. That's how many pounds of the herbicide glyphosate were sprayed across the United States in just a 10-year span. I mean, that is just a staggering, hard to imagine number. And once again, we see that same exact split in thinking. In the EU, its use is super limited, and they're even talking about potential bans. But in the US, it's used everywhere, and the EPA has actually increased the amount of residue that's allowed on crops like soy and corn. And this is a big deal because just like potassium bromate, the WHO's cancer agency has looked at glyphosate and classified it as a probable carcinogen. So okay, we've got different additives in our bread, different chemicals on our farms, but what's the real why behind all of this? What's the root cause? Well, here's the thing. It's not actually about any one specific ingredient. It's not about ADDA or a glyphosate. It's about something much deeper. It's about philosophy. This right here is the absolute heart of the matter. We are looking at two completely different philosophies when it comes to food safety.
And these two ways of thinking are what create two totally different experiences when you walk down a supermarket aisle.
So, the EU's approach is called the precautionary principle. You can basically think of it as better safe than sorry, or maybe guilty until proven innocent. If there's some scientific evidence that suggests an ingredient could be harmful, even if it's not 100% proven, regulators can restrict it or ban it just to be safe. The pressure is on the company to prove without a doubt that their product is safe for people to eat.
The US takes a totally different route. It's called the risk-based approach. And if the EU is guilty until proven innocent, this is the complete opposite. Innocent until proven guilty. An ingredient is basically allowed to be used until regulators or the public can prove that there's a significant risk of harm. So here, the burden of proof is completely flipped. It's on the government and the public to prove something is dangerous.
So, okay, these are two very different ideas about safety. What does that actually look like out in the real world, on a real shelf? Well, the results can be pretty wild. Let's look at one famous example.
Believe it or not, back in 2020, the Supreme Court of Ireland had to rule on a really weird question. Is the bread at Subway actually bread? And the whole case came down to one thing: sugar. As the court said here, there was no dispute that the sugar content in Subway's bread was 10% of the weight of the flour. So here's the kicker. In Ireland, to be legally called bread, the sugar content can't be more than 2%. Subway's was 10%, 5 times the legal limit. So the court ruled that, legally speaking, it wasn't bread. Instead, it was classified as confectionery. That's the same category as a cake or a sweet pastry. A perfect, almost funny example of how these different rule books have very real consequences.
So you have to wonder, is this innocent until proven guilty approach in the US ever going to change? Well, things are starting to shift, but it's not really coming from the top down. Change at the federal level is incredibly slow. Instead, the real pressure is coming from two places: from individual states, like California passing its own Food Safety Act, and from all of you, from consumers. It was public backlash, after all, that pushed Subway to voluntarily take that yoga mat chemical out of its bread. So, after all that, what should you take away from this? First, remember that the biggest difference isn't just about a few random ingredients. It's about that core philosophy of safety. Second, and this is so important, we know for a fact that safe alternatives exist. Companies use them every single day to sell the exact same products in Europe. And finally, the most powerful tool you have right now is just being aware. Actually reading the ingredient labels and knowing to look out for things like potassium bromate or bromated flour is the best way to know exactly what you're eating. And all of this really leaves us with one big final question to think about. Global companies have already solved this problem. They've already reformulated their products to sell them without these additives all over Europe and in many other countries. So if they already know how to do it, if it's not just possible but is literally happening every day around the world, why is this still even a debate in the US?